Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I need Megazord power, now! Rising from the HLJ volcano of molten zinc, the super robot Chogokin Daizyujin is an item of much intrigue. One of the first Tamashii collector items out of Japan that I would call a finger pointed directly at the bulk of English-speaking collectors. This is the highest-end collectible of Zyuranger's Great Beast God and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers original Megazord released to date. Invoke its name, and let the review appear before you. The sculpt on this guy is a crisp sea of delicious hard lines and edges. The main features are obviously captured, and many tampograph details get some panel line sculpting to accentuate their paintwork. There are even parts showing where bits of the Dino Zords would have folded away if this toy did transform, which it entirely does not. SRC says, get over it. Speaking of paintwork, it's just as fine and clean as the sculpt. The Sentai Robo primaries pop perfectly in their semi-asymmetrical glory. Nearly every detail gets multiple colors to its surface, and the head features some really thin pinstriping around the brow and crest. The only point of contention I see is that the SRC Daizyujin's aesthetics are a lot less cardboard suit than the Megazord we know and love. It's followed its SRC Sentai Robo brethren into the realm of having streamlined and sleekened proportions, and I am 50 shades of okay with that. However, if you're in the market for something boxier, you are out of luck. It's less crazy than the Retrofire Megazords, at least. Also, the Chogokin side of this now super robot lies primarily in its chest plate and shins. The zinc chunks are beefy and satisfying. The Daizyujin's posability is absolutely to die for. You see, he's the Oh, jeez. His head's on a very expressive ball joint, and that is connected to a neck that has its own little kind of forward and backward pivot, meaning you can get some really good range of head banging out of this guy, or a little bit of unts. His shoulders, aside from having this separate joint for the shoulder armor, are also on multiple joints. You have a ball joint. I believe it's actually a ball joint because it's making that scary creaking noise ball joints tend to make. And it also has a separate joint for inward shoulder blade movement, which reveals techie detail. I love this. This seems like a very SRC kind of thing to do. He's got elbows with very pronounced double jointing and a ball-jointed wrist that can wiggle around a little bit, but let's say it's not wiggling around enough for you. Well, guess what? Oh, look at that. Whole other joint. This is a very singular joint. This is mostly just for the sake of the shield, but if you do want this dude to really flex, I guess it's there for that as well. He's got a hidden ab crunch. Hidden meaning that you gotta pop this open to reveal the joint inside. And it's a really deep ab crunch, all things considered. Now, I think there's also a ball joint on the waist, but I, for the life of me, cannot get it to move more than like a millimeter. It seems like it's really stiff, and there's not very much clearance around a lot of the stuff on his waist to let me try to work it free. So unfortunately on mine, I can't really swivel his waist, which is surprising given how much else he can do. He's got a lot of skirt jointage to get this stuff out of the way on the sides and front. The back is kind of rigid. And on the front, this kind of reveals something cool. Number one, a lot of his hip assembly is made out of solid die-cast. Number two, he kind of has SH Figuarts style hips, where the what would you call it? The central area of the ball joint can be shifted up or down, and I think that's kind of awesome. Then he's also got a thigh swivel. He's got this cool thing where when you bend the knee, you reveal, oh, look at that, sculpted detail. And then you can bend it again to give him some full-on double jointing. Which, by the way, apparently wouldn't have worked originally when they had little tiny T-Rex feet sticking out of here, so they flattened those out almost entirely just so you could, once in a while, fully double joint the Megazord's knee, if you ever really wanted to do that. And thanks to the Figuarts style hip joint swivel down thingy, you can get this guy to move his leg all the way forward, but it's super stiff on mine. I know there's a lot of metal involved, so I'm not too freaked out about it snapping, but I would avoid wrenching on it. Just move it with some careful, slow applications of force. Finally, this guy's ankles are also tiltable and wiggleable, but, because he's got, like, heads for feet, the stuff's gonna bang around all over the place. Well, don't worry, just do this. Pow. Now you've got a lot more room to play with, and by opening up this bit of space down here, you can swivel the Triceratops head up and break his toe. This is actually for really deep, kind of like on one toe style poses, and this guy is super solid when doing those. The crazier thing, though, is when you do the same thing with the saber-toothed tiger, because it has a similar bit of engineering, but for the sake of this weirdness, this stuff folds back like a secondary heel, and then the saber-toothed tiger head folds up. I think that this is awesome, because at first I was like, can these joints even do stuff? And then I found out that, like, yes, they totally can. And thanks to all that stuff popping and extending and snapping and Daizyujining, this dude's ability to stay rigid in poses and not fall down is pretty good. So, congrats, Daizyujin. You are a very posable Megazord, and possibly the most posable one I have been subject to date. Granted, I haven't bought a lot of the other Sentai robos in the series, but that aside, this guy is posing in a way that makes him able to punch monsters. But what else can he do? He's got stuff on him, let's find out about it. Aside from a pair of monster-punching fists, the Daizyujin also includes 2 more pairs of hands. There are open hands, which on their own let him look a lot more dynamic than the Megazord ever did on screen. And there are gripping hands, which can be used with his pair of melee accessories. The first of which is the Dinosaur Sword God Horn. It's clean, shiny, and just pointy enough to draw blood if you're not careful. The Megazord can hold it firmly in either hand, but really, it belongs in his right hand. There's also an effect part to show the blade charging up for its near-weekly decimation of a giant monster. The effect is a tad cheesy, adding a ton of electric crackles and trying to make the God Horn look like it's glowing with 1992 special effects. However, this also means it literally slides over the sword with ease. It stays on with just enough snugness to not fall off unless shaken, and I think I prefer this simple and easy implementation. The other melee accessory is the mighty Mammothstodon shield. It's a robot mammoth mastodon head, with a handle. Thanks to the Daizyujin's wrist joints, it can be held facing forward at any degree of arm tilt. While it has great paint apps, I do wish the tusks and nose were a lighter silver to match the backpack. Also, the nose doesn't move at all, if you were hoping for that. Going outside of melee range, there is another effect part, this time representing the Daizyujin's forehead laser beam, that I'm sure some Power Rangers historian can inform us about as to its place in North American Toku lore. It plugs onto the tip of the robot's crown and is made of 3 pieces that can swivel around independently. There's also a peg to lock the whole effect together if you want it focused forward at all times. Be careful with this piece, as some have already reported that it scuffed the red paint on Daizyujin's helmet. For the longest range of combat, you can swivel the oft-forgotten cannons over this Megazord's ample shoulders, thanks to a double ball-jointed connector. It's a really cool touch, marred only by a lack of solid clip-in points for when the cannons are folded away. The Super Robot Chogokin Daizyujin is a very solid release, coupled with the enormous nostalgia factor it carries as the original Megazord for English-speaking collectors. I'm very happy to report that it hits a lot of its necessities out of the park. It's a fun, solid figure with engaging and simple accessories. My only notable qualm is that its waist swivel is surprisingly limited, at least on mine, given the rest of its excellent articulation management. I highly recommend this release, unless you are still mad that it doesn't transform. Though, I guess you could tear it apart if you really, really wanted to. Just grab an arm, grab a leg, just start yanking, bust that zinc in half. I'm sure some of you are strong enough. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus. Seeing a wide release in 2 continents, there should be enough Daizyujins for everybody, which means only one logical course of action. Mass Megazord party at the Tamashi booth, next convention. Let's do it, people.